Let's dial in Lara Trump, Fox News contributor, who is from not far from Myrtle Beach. Good morning to you, Lara.
Good morning.
Good morning. That's right. I'm from Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. It's a beautiful time of year down there.
It is indeed. Hey, Lara, what do you make of the fact that now, the Pentagon's going, General Milley called his counterpart in China to warn him that if your unstable father-in-law tried to start a war, he would stop it. Did General Milley stab your father-in-law in the back?
It certainly appears that way, Steve. I struggle to find another way to see this, quite frankly. We now have, within the span of a little over a week, 2 phone calls that we've learned about, one from Joe Biden to the Afghan president, and now this phone call of Mark Milley's that would have certainly resulted in an impeachment for Donald Trump. And yet, I guess we've forgotten now about the phone call Joe Biden had. We're just done with that one. Now we see that obviously this was insubordinate. Obviously, the chain of command was broken. This borders on treason. I know some people have said this is a treasonous act. It doesn't matter, guys, whether or not you like the president of the United States, whether you agree with him politically. That is the president of the United States. That is the commander-in-chief, and that is the individual that calls the shots and needs to know about phone calls like this. Yes, we're finding out there were more people that were involved, but if the president of the United States himself did not know, that is a big problem.
Do you think, evidently, that gap period between the election day and January 20th, the inauguration day, the president was incensed a lot of the time. In fact, this is what one quote was about General Milley. He says he feared Trump was suffering serious mental decline. How would you characterize the former president during that period?
Well, that is an absurd reflection of what actually happened. Well, when you have a very questionable election result and you don't get results for quite some time, I think you probably would be a little upset as well. My father-in-law, when he was the president of the United States, had complete and total control of everything. By the way, you contrast how he acted as president versus Joe Biden. At least the world knew that we were serious. At least we weren't being laughed at. At least we weren't getting 13 service members killed over in Afghanistan while Donald Trump was in office. So I think it's a ridiculous assessment. I'm not surprised that that is the characterization of somebody that doesn't like him, but I think we all know that that was not the case.
According to this book, Peril, it says not only did Milley have this call with China telling them, look, if we're going to attack you, I'll let you know in advance. But they're also saying that Nancy Pelosi called Milley demanding the nuclear football be taken away from your father-in-law during this time period. And Milley summoned his senior officials and told them that he must be involved in any decision to launch a nuclear weapon. And if that's the case, is that collusion? This is what Chris Miller, he's the former acting Secretary of Defense, he says, I did not authorize these calls with China. That's a violation of duty. He said pursuit of partisan politics and individual self-interest are a violation of an officer's sacred duty and have no place in the United States military. A lesser-ranking officer accused of such behavior would immediately be relieved of duty pending a thorough and independent investigation. As Secretary of Defense, I did not and would not ever authorize such conduct. So if there is an investigation, and if it's true, your father-in-law is accusing him of treason, the Republicans are demanding that Milley resign. Will he resign? Do you think he should?
I don't know whether or not he will resign. I think this is yet another embarrassment for America, and I think a lot of people would like to see him resign. I think at the very least we could ask that we get some answers from him, that we hear in a congressional setting exactly what happened here. We certainly want to get the transcripts, the full transcripts from this call. And I'm curious, was Nancy Pelosi sworn in as president of the United States and none of us knew? Maybe she ought to answer some questions too. It's a real debacle and quite a mess right now. I hope we can get this sorted out, and I hope it's not like everything else that has happened under Joe Biden where we just sweep it under the rug.
Well, it's impossible to sweep under the rug, Laura, what's happening on our southern border. We showed folks a moment ago an image of 7,000 migrants under a bridge waiting. And look at this. It's a picture of a 2-year-old girl and her 3-month-old baby brother. Somebody abandoned them down near Del Rio, Texas. just, you know, waiting for the Americans to come and save their lives. It's just heartbreaking. And then you look at the bridge with 7,000 people underneath. They're just waiting to be apprehended. And now the news is apparently the administration, in their wisdom, has decided, okay, if you're a migrant and you're coming into the country, we need to vaccinate you, give you at least one shot, but only if you do it legally. If you're illegal, you know what? You're not going to get a shot.
I mean, I just wonder sometimes, how dumb do they think the American people are? What you just described there is absurd. The fact that we have a fully open southern border, that people can just come on over it any way they want. They don't need to be vaccinated. I was watching the show earlier when it was described exactly how this happens. They come over and then they are transported all across the United States of America. They're not tested for COVID. They are not vaccinated. But back to that photo of the 2-year-old and the 3-month-old, my daughter, Carolina, just turned 2 last month. This is a horrifying thing to see. And when is it enough? Where's AOC, by the way? Remember when she was crying down at the southern border during the Trump administration about all the kids? Where is she now? I know she was busy at the Met Gala flaunting around in that very fancy dress of hers. Why is there not more outrage from the folks on the left about what is happening at our southern border, especially to these kids? 200,000 that we know of last month alone. If you extrapolate that out over 12 months, 2.4 million people illegally in America that we have documented at this point. Think about all those people that come over we never know about, guys.
All right, Lara Trump, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lara.
Thanks, guys.
August to August, a year, up 300% number of illegals year to year.